everybody. My guest today is Mike Spadier. This is Mike's second time on the show. Mike is a good friend. He is the Chief Marketing Officer of Still Austin, a distillery based here in Austin, Texas. I met Mike when he was Chief Marketing Officer at On It Labs. We spent a whole lot of time together, both in a professional sense, working on marketing projects through Live Oak, working on IT stuff for Still, and in a personal sense, sitting around a campfire with buddies, drinking bourbon and talking about life. Always appreciate my time that I get to spend with Mike. Hoping this won't be the last time we get a chance to visit together. But with all that said, I hope you'll enjoy this conversation with Mike Spadier.
Yeah, there's a fear of failure, I think, and then there's a fear of getting something solidified as like, this is what I'm doing, because then it becomes a potential failure, so you don't even do it. So I'll give you an example. Like, if you know somebody who's ever done the post online, you're not a big social media guy, but if somebody you know that makes a social media post like, this is the year, I'm going to lose 25 pounds starting today. This is what, a picture of their scale or like, raw eggs or whatever it is. Like, I'm going. I always see that and I cringe because I'm like, you put that out there now. You know what I mean? And now, like, the good part of that is like the accountability. Like, you feel like you've put this out there. So now I got to stick to it. And all these people are going to be paying attention, judging me, like hoping I, whatever. But I think like once that's out there, if you fail, you're going to hurt yourself twice as bad, 10 times as bad, because you feel now that it was broadcast out there and like there's all these people watching you fail, and you made the commitment to do this thing and failed spectacularly. So I think like a lot of people subconsciously do that with big decisions, moving, new business, new job, marriage, relationship, whatever. Like, they're scared of where that might end so that they don't even get going.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
I do. Yeah. And I think that to a certain extent, it's a problem with being a cerebral person.
Yeah.
A person that's constantly thinking about, how am I doing? What am I approaching? What am I pursuing that I shouldn't be? And what am I not pursuing that I should be?
Yeah.
And constantly evaluating those things can really be to your detriment.
Mm-hmm.
Where you'd almost wish that you were just dumb enough to not give a shit about it.
Yep.
And I would make more progress if I just didn't care, and I would throw myself headlong into things.
Yeah, well, that plays into another idea that I've had for a while, which is like, entrepreneurs specifically are the right amount of stupid.
Yeah, it's
because exactly. Because I think like the people that I've met in my life that I've really like respected from an intelligence level, or like from an acumen, or degrees, certifications, whatever, I think that there's a part where you get so smart and so intelligent that you know how dumb it is to start something or to do something or whatever. You have to be a little bit irrational and naive and a little bit stupid to think that your idea is going to work. And I've had this conversation with a couple of these people, like Chris at the founder at Still. I've said that to him. I was like, when I finished my agency thing, it was like, man, if I knew then what I know now, I would have never done this, because I know so much about what it takes to make an agency successful and how hard that is and all the shit I had to go through. It's like, I would never do that again. So for him, it's like, start a whiskey company. Start a whiskey company in Austin. Start a whiskey company in Austin, Texas. If you knew what that takes and how hard and how difficult that is and what you're going to have to go through and how much money that's going to take and all the heartbreak and, people that you got to go through and all of the different like pieces of that industry and how long and difficult that is, like, you don't do that if you're smart. Like, if you know all that stuff, you're like, I'm not doing this.
Yeah.
This is ridiculous. I'll do something easier. But if you're just dumb enough, then you got a chance.
You got to have a little bit of naivety.
Yeah.
You have to have a lot of hubris.
Mm-hmm.
which is like overconfidence in self and we'll just figure this out when we get there.
Yeah. That's America, though. When people say what makes America exceptional or American exceptionalism or greatest country in the world, I think they confuse it sometimes, and they say stuff like, "Oh, our freedoms," and I'm like, I think what makes us great is that we're dumb. Because Germany is super smart,
right?
And they're smart enough to know I'm not special.
Yeah.
I'm not going to start that.
It's this like LFG part of our culture.
Yeah, for sure.
We'll figure it out as we go. Let's fucking go.
There's a reason why, whether you're in Texas, Florida, California, on the coast, whatever, there's a reason why the image of the cowboy out on the range is attractive.
Right.
Like it's something that's just like appealing to us of like, yeah, that's it. It's like something about this American whatever thing. We really love it because of that individualism and, me and the land, we'll figure it out or whatever. And like, I always just say like, hey, what is it about this country or the American dream or why are we good or why are we whatever? It's like, it's the cowboy. Like, that's it. That's us. Everyone else in the world doesn't see it that way.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. And it's probably more pronounced in a place like Texas too, where you have a whole generation of people that settled here that were the biggest version of that you can imagine, because you're going into Comanche territory and
you're dumb enough
right.
to do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like you're in New York, there's a city here. Right? There's horses, we got infrastructure, we got water, we got all this stuff.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, but I'm going to go way out there where there's just tons of open land and like, I'll figure it out. Yeah. Like you're an idiot.
It's a call to adventure. There's an archetype of entrepreneur that is the inch wide, mile deep type. That's enviable for somebody like me because it just makes your decision making so much easier.
Yeah.
Like if my lane is this wide, but I know everything about this one subject matter, it makes all my decisions easier. I don't have to worry about what else is outside of that inch. I just know this is the thing that I'm interested in, so I'm going to pursue it intensely.
Yep.
I don't think that's a lack of intellect per se, or a lack of cognition, as much as it is like you're just wired to only like one thing, and you don't have to think about anything else.
Yeah.
It's almost sometimes feels a little bit like a curse to be inch deep, mile wide.
Yeah.
But maybe some of that is what you're talking about, of like the fear of failure. So I won't even get started on something because I don't want to start it and say, oh yeah, I'm doing a podcast now. And then 6 months from now, I'm not doing it. Right. Then I got to explain why I'm not doing it.
There's something that changes when it becomes official. And I was talking to a friend about this the other day who wants to start a brand. And he was like, oh, I'm going to raise money and then I'm going to do this. And then I think it might work and whatever. And I was like, look, dude, what if you don't make it official and it's an art project that then becomes a thing? Even if you have that plan the whole time, as soon as you go like, I need a logo, I need a brand name, I need a, board, I need financing, I need whatever, like now you've built all of these bricks into a, building. And now it's like, shit, I got to make sure the power stays on in this building. I got to make sure there's water running. I need to make sure that the people that live here like have, sewage working or whatever. But if it's just like you're doing this thing in the background, you don't make this announcement that we have this building project that's coming and, in 15 years, it's going to look like this. And trust me, give me your money. Like all of a sudden you just turn around and there's a building there. And then you could be like, oh, look at this.
Right.
We built a building while I was having fun.
Can somebody responsibly build a business? Let's use Still Austin as an example.
Sure.
What's the guy's name that started it?
Chris Seals and his dad, Cleveland.
Okay, so can Chris look at Still Austin as though it's an art project forever? Or is there a point at which it's irresponsible to look at it as an art project that you're just constantly making progress on? Do you need to say, okay, this is different now, we need to turn it into a legitimate business?
I can't speak for him because I don't know what his, mindset and whatever is. I think at some point you have to make a switch.
Okay, so pause. Use my business as an example.
Sure.
So hubris is definitely part of our business model because I'm not an IT guy.
Put that on the plaque.
Yeah, we are hubris. But starting an IT business, not being an IT person, naivety was a founding principle for sure.
Yeah.
But the art project piece of it, it took developing a friendship with Madison to have him explain to me why I do have an art form. It's just building a business.
Mm-hmm.
To me, when it ceases to be that, at least as it relates to my job at the company, when I can't go be an artist and, be creative on how we do things and how we get better, it loses its luster for me.
Mm-hmm.
It's only interesting for me to do. It's only something that I want to do and continue to spend time doing if it's artistic and creative and I can be free spirited. The moment it becomes a job for me, I'm out. I want to go do something else.
Yeah, I think it's very individual because I think that I've seen and been a part of businesses that go from like a couple of dudes in a room to, 100 employees, right? And when you're a part of that process from that 0 to 100 or 200 or whatever it is, you see the utility of certain types of people at certain types of that business. And you see the utility expire for those people.
Yes.
And then you see a new crop of people that are super useful at that next phase. And then you see the next phase, and then you see the next phase. And then you see yourself losing that utility in that mix somewhere and going, oh, like I grew up a lot in that On It experience because of that. Because I saw these people, early people that expired essentially. It's not that they no longer have use in life. It's that they no longer have utility at this organization now.
Right.
I kept seeing myself as like, okay, I need to keep growing so that I can continue to have utility as this thing moves. But then I saw a point where I was like very consciously like, oh, the next part, I don't want to be a part of. I've now expired, right? Like now I've done that a few times now to be like conscious and aware of where that utility is best. And now that's where I'm aiming towards is like this window of time. I know I'm really good for certain organizations that are in that window, and I'm really bad outside of that window. Really bad because I'm disinterested, like you said. I don't have the motivation to do what the next thing is, and it's no longer the fun or the art project or whatever. However, I've seen those people come in at those phases and have that same ferocity for that version of it. So, for you, once it becomes this, you're out. For somebody else, like that's their sweet spot.
Right.
And then earlier, that's somebody else's sweet spot.
So then the goal for somebody like me is to just predetermine what that is.
If you can. I mean, I think it evolves in real time. And like I think figured it out for myself where I'm, where my utility is best.
Yeah.
But that could change.
For me, it has to be predetermined. Yeah. Because, and this is, maybe it's just unique to me, but I would think that a lot of people in my position are creative at their core. A lot of creative people are emotional as well.
Yeah, for sure.
And for me, if I don't have, to your point, there's going to come a time when my business is going to require something of its CEO that I'm not willing to give it.
Mm-hmm.
If I wait until that period to then have that question mark out there of knowing, okay, maybe is this the time?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, if I'm caught up in the emotion of where I am at any specific point in our trajectory, in 11 years, there's a half a dozen times that I would have just jumped off the ride if I didn't have some sort of a, boxes still to check to keep me doing it. There's a lot of places where I would have just said, well, this is the time that this business needs to level up and it needs a mature CEO, and I'm just not going to be the guy to do it.
Sure. Yeah.
So predetermining what are the hallmarks of maturity in this business that will tell me when it's time to jump off the ship.
Yeah.
Would be useful.
Well, the thing is, it's like anything else. Like if somebody tells you that, you can't absorb it. Like you have to go through it.
Yeah. It has to be your own idea.
Well, it's not even idea. It's knowing it in the way that your kids or 2 + 2, whatever. Yeah. There's no question when it's actually real.
Right.
So I think it's fine to do the exercise of saying like, where is that point? It's fine. There's nothing bad about it. It won't be real until it's real.
Right.
Like everything I just said about knowing where my window is, there was no stage where I was like, oh, now I get it, except for today. Like literally, like I know it today. You know what I'm saying?
I do. Yeah,
and
I do.
because I went through it on it, I went through it with Heart of the Sun, and now I've gone through it with Still, I've seen the pattern to where like, oh, this is me. I get it. I'm the one that's causing this parabola, right? Where it's like really, really good, going great. Like now I've hit that like max where I can provide the most amount of value. Now we're starting to come down the other side a little bit. And I could outwardly say like, oh, it's this and it's that, and this is why it's not. And, or I could be like, oh no, that's me. This is my pattern. I've kind of figured out what it is that I can do before it starts to go down the other side. And I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
I'll just go find something where, you know, I'm still in that up curve somewhere else.
And it's not literal things that happen that are themselves markers for, okay, I need to move on now because this, and this happens. It's more so I know what this feels like. I've been here before.
Yep.
I know when I've persisted long beyond my shelf life.
Yep.
And I'm approaching that point. That's my grandpa told a story. So my grandpa, my dad's dad, was executive director at Texas X's.
Yep.
The UT Alumni
I
Association.
think you might have told me this one before too.
Okay. So his version of this was realizing the leadership at the university was all getting old enough that they were going to start changing those positions over. There was going to be a new president of the university, and the executive director at Texas X's and the president of the university needed to be in lockstep with each other.
Right.
And he realized, if I stay long enough, the university president's going to change over. And then when I go to leave, the person that's going to replace me is going to be the new kid on the block. And it would be much better for the university. It'd be much better for the association if the association executive director was the seasoned veteran to welcome the new university president. And that was the thing that catalyzed in his mind, okay, this is the end.
Yeah.
I need to find my replacement.
Yep.
So it's not like he made that decision ahead of time. He just knew
you see it.
These are the things that are going to make it better for somebody else as a replacement.
I think it's about having your antenna up, you know, for that information to be received, but you only even know to put the antenna up.
Right.
If you're locked in on that thing that happened before and introspective about it and like understanding how that whole thing panned out, so that it's the same reason you study history, right? Like, so that you can see the future. So as it's like occurring, it's like, oh, okay, got it.
Yeah.
Message received.
Yes.
Let's start this next part.
Those who don't learn from history are doomed to repeat it.
Totally.
Yeah. So the inch wide, mile deep thing, Ashton and I, my wife, talked about this last week because we went to Disney. This has sort of a marketing through line to it because of what Disney built in Florida. Like, we watched a documentary on the history of Disney World in Florida. And you've got like 24,000 acres of property. You've got 4 parks. You've got this thing that only existed in Walt Disney's mind as something that would be achievable and worth pursuing. And then he died in the course of them building it, and his brother had to come in and take the project over and say, no, we are still going to continue to do this. Let's make it reality. It was executed so well that you have a whole generation of people. Do you know what a Disney adult is? You familiar with this? You have this whole generation of people.
I had a season pass to Disneyland when I was in college.
I didn't realize that was a thing. And marketing taken to the extreme can actually produce a whole generation of people who are an inch wide and a mile deep in Disney characters, like tattoo sleeves, tattoos all over your legs that are just Disney themed. We met a guy. Well, I say we met him. I overheard a conversation in a bus from park to park. This guy's got a big Lilo and Stitch. He's got a Stitch tattoo on his forearm. And he's talking to this young couple across from him that were there with their kids. And he says, he's talking about his family and his history with Disney and how much he loves the movies. And Lilo and Stitch was a movie that caught him at a certain time of his development. And he obviously, Stitch resonated with him enough that he'd ink it on his body. Well, the mom in the couple he was talking to said, so you're married? Are you here with your family? where's your wife? Where are your kids? And he says, no, they didn't get to make this trip. This was just a trip for daddy.
Crazy, right?
That's wild to me that that's a real thing.
It's a real thing in almost anything that's reached that level of popularity. So the fanaticism for a brand that goes beyond a product, from a marketing standpoint, that's what we're all trying to strive for. These unicorns like Nike, Apple, Disney, Coca-Cola, shit, I mean, even In-N-Out to a certain degree.
Mm-hmm.
This level of fandom to where like you've got Coca-Cola Santa Claus pictures up in your study at home. You know what I mean? Like, to us, we're not Coca-Cola fans, and it's like, what the hell is this?
Yeah.
Same thing with Disney. Nike's that way, Apple's that way. It's the noblest version of that from a marketing standpoint is like, get somebody to believe in your thing so much that they're getting the tattoo and they're, doing all that. But it's also weird. It's also very weird.
That's what I wanted to ask you.
Yeah, it's weird.
Can it be taken too far? Can you be too good at your job and building a brand that you actually create an impediment for whole groups of people that
I think so. I don't think it's being so good at my job. I think it's if the stars align just right and you really like tap into somebody's emotional state. It's a pride point on one side because it's like we used to get people that would send us photos of On It tattoos.
I was going to say, surely there are On It tattoos.
No, lots. And we would feel like immensely proud and be like, wow, we've reached the tattoo level. But at the same time, you feel a little bad because it's like, yo, dude, this is a company. And eventually this company is going to be under someone else's control.
Right. And
that tattoo might not be the tattoo you want in a few years.
We're going to change that logo.
We're going to change the name. We're going to go out of business. You're going to find out that some controversy that now you're associated with this group in a really negative way, whatever. Like Chesley, when she worked for me, was like, once we hit this, I'm going to get the Heart of the Sun tattoo. I was like, don't get a Heart of the Sun tattoo.
Yeah.
She's like, why? I was like, it's a name that we came up with, like, in passing, first of all. Second of all, this is a company. Third of all, I'm probably going to sell this company one day. Fourth of all, like, no. Like, if you're just tattoo crazy and you've got weird tattoos and, like, it doesn't mean anything to you, fine. I will feel very strange if you have a tattoo of the company that I started on you. Like, we're not doing that,
Yeah.
So it's weird. It's like you see the Disney kids, adults or whatever. And like a lot of that is it's really not so much about Disney as much as it is an extension of a period in their life that they're looking back on like really fondly. And they're trying to like tap into that all the time and go to Disney by themselves as a full grown adult and like rekindle all those feelings. Because to them, that logo, those characters, all that stuff is about that moment in their life when they were that age, going through whatever they were going through, a super happy memory, whatever it is. And they've like attached all that stuff to it.
Mm-hmm.
That's brand, And so that's what I'm saying. Like, that's what you strive for when you're creating brands. But to your point, at some point it becomes a little like,
yeah,
that worked a little too well. You wouldn't have that tattoo if you knew all the things that went on in the boardroom.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right. I do know what you mean. So how do you, as a marketing professional, how do you reckon with the potential that what you're doing actually crosses an ethical line at some point? Or do you ever look at it that way?
No, 100%. You have to look at it that way. Especially like I've been in some industries that don't have that in mind at all. Right. So marketing has a lot of components to it. And the emotional side of it is the best and the worst side of it. It can be. So if you get somebody to buy in on a product because it has, good features, that's kind of more sales than marketing. Mm-hmm. Like if I say like, oh, this coffee's delicious and it's cheaper than Starbucks and it's local. Okay, those are features, right? And those features might appeal to you to say like, oh, that's the reason I want to buy that coffee. But if I get you to fall in love with this coffee because our story is about this immigrant family who's supporting their community by growing these beans in this neighborhood, and first generation to start a business, and they pulled themselves out of poverty and all this stuff. Now you're like emotionally attached to this thing. If I raise the price a couple of bucks, you don't care. You know what I mean?
Right.
We come out with a new flavor, you're getting it no matter what, right? So now you're emotionally connected to this brand. That's the good part, right? There's a good story there. There's all this like true stuff that's getting you to fall in love with this brand that makes you become a customer for life and love it, right? Job well done. If I make all that up, right, and that person that I invented that says, this family in Guadalajara that pulled themselves out of poverty, if that's all bullshit and I'm actually buying this from, leftover waste from this other shitty coffee company in, Florida or whatever the hell it is, and I make all this stuff up and Juan Valdez isn't real, and I get you to fall in love with it that way, yeah, that's unethical.
Yeah.
That's shitty. Right? The outcome's the same. We're still printing money and you fell in love with the brand. But like if it comes from that ugly place, like, yeah, that sucks. So some people don't care, right? And some people just say, well, yeah, if it gets them to fall in love, that's all that matters.
Yeah.
I love to think about a world where we could just only do it the right way. But there's also plenty of people out there that are just, yeah, this is how you do it. This is how you convince people. It's all marketing anyway. Who cares?
Right. You ever found yourself in that position where you realize like, oh no, I'm actually contributing my time and talent to something that I actually have an ethical misalignment with?
No, I've been pretty good about that. I mean, you could make the case for that on almost everything. So there's like, some level of comfort that you're okay with. Like we're selling whiskey to people. Like that's not a health thing. That's not necessarily a great thing. It certainly can be abused, certainly can ruin lives and, whatever else. But I've also had some of the best conversations and, warmest memories of my life sitting around drinking a whiskey with people.
Yeah.
So it's really, the gun's a tool, right? Like it's what you do with it.
Right.
Guns are there. You can go have the most meaningful hunting experience with your dad of your life that you cherish that memory forever and fed your family and all that, or you could go murder people. So as long as I'm not steering the marketing of the gun ownership to like killing people and steering it towards this other part,
the healthy use case,
I'm okay with it.
Could the same thing be said for cigarettes? Like there are some people that would make the argument that nicotine is actually a nootropic. As long as you're not chain smoking cigarettes, it's probably not going to give you lung cancer. Right. So could you say the same thing that, well, I can be a marketer for Marlboro and not be worried about the ethical lines that I'm crossing, even though I know for sure that I'm convincing people to participate in a lifestyle that will very likely kill them?
I think you could convince yourself of anything for sure and be okay with it at any level.
Yeah.
I think it's just a matter of like how personally strongly you feel about that. So my dad smokes 5 packs of Marlboros a day, always has since I've been born. It's just him. I've never thought of him as anything other than a smoker. I don't think of it negatively because it is what it is. I have been offered the opportunity to work for a tobacco brand before to do marketing, and that was like the first thing they said. It was like, ethically, are you okay doing something like this? And I was like, yeah, we'll see. Like on the surface level, like we're talking about a product that's legal and it's out there, people could buy it. So then it's just a matter of like who does it better, who does it more ethically, who does it more clever, I guess, right? But you could just draw the line right off the bat and be like, I don't want to be a part of that thing. You could do that with alcohol, you could do it with whatever. I think personally where I'm at today, if somebody offered me that opportunity, it would be exciting because of the challenge of like, how do we really like, sell a product that everybody knows is bad for you? I think it would come down to the details of the methodology.
Yeah.
Like I would actually be stoked to market cigarettes if we could be subversive about it. So if it was like, if the whole campaign was like, you're going to fucking die anyway. Like now I'm on board because now I'm not hiding the fact that like this is bad for you, and I'm not pretending like 4 out of 5 doctors agree this is the better cigarette. Like if you just lean into it and just wink and nod at the customer and be like, James Dean looked cool smoking, like is gonna kill you, and that's kind of cool too, like you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that's really what made smoking cool. You look cool when you're smoking, or used to. There's a danger in it, and like the bad boy's cool. Like fucking Marlboro. Like the Marlboro Man, cowboy, going back to that thing.
Yeah.
Like
jean jacket.
Jean shirt.
Oh,
But
sure.
who looks cooler than the Marlboro Man?
Mm-hmm.
The fact, the shitty part of that is like they're not honest about that. I would be honest about that.
Yeah.
Look how dope this guy looks. Like that would be my tagline.
Your line in the sand can't be whether or not this thing could be abused, because anything could be abused, right?
Totally.
But you would have to give at least some attention to the percentage chance that you're actually going to use this thing in a way that's going to benefit you in your life.
Mm-hmm.
Like here's an example. Porn.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe for some people, they can use porn as a substance, just use it as a substance in a way that's edifying to their relationship, that, adds some spice to their marriage.
Yeah.
But if abused, does the exact opposite.
Sure.
Maybe it's possible for people to do that. I can sit around a campfire and have 2 little sippers of tequila and not want to have any more tequila. I'm not as susceptible to abusing that product.
Right.
I'd be more susceptible to abusing something like porn.
Mm-hmm.
But I would look at for my own personal subjective experience, I can't fathom a healthy context for that substance in a way that I would, as a marketer, sign myself up to try to expand the brand of this porn empire.
Yeah. I mean, look, dude, you just said it. You can find that in anything.
You can find it in Disney.
You can find it in Disney. You can find it in charity, right? Like at some level, you're just begging for money. Right? Like you can find it in anything. I think that's actually maybe touching on something that's one of the very unique and cool things about America as well, is like at least some of the ideas about what America is supposed to be, which is sort of like the freedom to do whatever you want.
Yeah.
And make your choices and figure out, you can't tell me that I can't buy cigarettes if I want to. Like we have all the data. We know this is bad, but if I want to buy cigarettes, I should be able to buy cigarettes.
Right.
If I want to watch porn, I should be able to watch it. If I want to buy beer, like this is the reason these things still exist. We know the net negative effect of all these bad things, but the opportunity for Americans to make the choice themselves and be held accountable for their actions and be able to say, look, you can go play football with your friends and tackle each other. No pads. But you might get hurt.
Right.
Like here's some information, and there's new information about brain injuries. You still want to play football, you can.
Yeah.
Just be aware that this is the situation.
You're saying that the net negative effect of porn use in somebody's life who would be prone to abuse it is not as bad as the net negative effect of prohibition.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying the alternative is we know what's best, so we're going to outlaw this thing. Right. Which is a slippery slope.
That's what I'm saying, is that the net negative effect of prohibition of a substance,
of anything,
be it alcohol, be it porn, be it drugs,
right?
That for a place like America, we've kind of proven that liberty is better than the potential consequences of.
I mean, I think that's what the promise of America was. And I think that that's where some of the division in the country comes from today, because I think a lot of people will prefer one or the other. And a lot of people are getting really militant about one or the other. So I think there's a huge group of people that would just rather say, this is a bad thing, and we know this, and we know what's best for you. Cut this out. And the opposite side is saying, Don't tell me what I can do.
Right.
Don't tell me what I can't do specifically. Give me the opportunity and the choice to make my own decisions and deal with those consequences on my own. Like growing up in California, I remember when they passed the helmet law for motorcyclists. I never rode a motorcycle; I was just a kid, but it was like a huge thing. It was like, why are you? uh, If I want to die, and crash my motorcycle, like, why do I have to like follow this rule? This doesn't make any sense to me, right? And
Yeah.
now Texas, like, you don't have to wear a helmet, and like it's probably the most dangerous thing you could do, right?
Yeah.
On a mass scale is like ride a motorcycle, but they don't make you wear a helmet.
The benefit of liberty outweighs the downside of not wearing a helmet.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. I do think that's right. I do think that if you give somebody the power to tell you what you can and cannot do, it will perpetually corrupt until you end up with a whole
It's
system
just a slippery slope.
built around
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. And I think that's why, like, I go back to like an example of like the NRA versus like the cigarette companies. So the cigarette companies, once it started coming out that this was like the worst thing in the world you could possibly do, they had a lot of sins for 40, 50 years of covering shit up and buying doctors off and whatever else. And then once they decided to start like acknowledging the fact that this is actually pretty bad for you, they started giving, right? And so they started giving into, okay, we won't do magazine ads anymore, right? We won't do commercials anymore. And so they're giving up these things. Then all of a sudden it's like, okay, smoking section in a restaurant, gone. You have to smoke outside. Then it goes from smoking section outside to no smoking within 200 feet of the building. Then it goes to a citywide ordinance, no smoking outdoors in our city. Okay, so you see where that goes, right? If you give anything, eventually it gets to the point where like you just can't smoke, NRA, I think, has taken a very crazy opposite approach to that, to where they say you will not take 1 inch of our gun freedoms because they know where that's going.
Knowing that it's a slippery slope, once you give the inch, they're going to take a mile.
Totally.
Yeah.
So as much as I think the NRA is weird in their tactics and kind of shitty in a lot of ways, I understand where they're coming from.
Sure. Yeah, but an alternative example to that would be seatbelt laws with NTSB, where we have a whole generation now who just looks at it as, you're in a car, put a seatbelt on, dummy.
Yep.
And that probably wouldn't have happened if you took the NRA approach of like, you can't tell me what to do. I'm going to drive this car without a seatbelt on.
Totally, man. And, it gets a little weird when you're talking about like the motorcycle helmets and the seatbelt laws and stuff like that, because it does start to affect other people. And then, then you get into like the COVID masks and shit like that, where it's like, yeah. Your freedom is starting to affect my freedom. Because you can get there. It's not a ridiculous argument to say like our hospitals are clogged up with these people that are, getting into these accidents that are totally preventable. Like if we just install a safety mechanism, 80% less people are going to be clogging our hospitals, and doctors can focus on this stuff instead of this. And like, this thing is preventable. We need to implement this law. It's for the benefit of everyone. You know what I mean? Like that makes sense, kind of. But I also kind of understand the other side.
The thing that concerns me about that is that once you've made those laws, much like the conversation we had about the yips and saying that this is my New Year's resolution and I'm going to post it on LinkedIn, you get pot committed. And when new data comes out that shows that maybe that thin surgical mask wasn't stopping things the way that we thought it was, but we already said that this needs to happen and we need to enforce it.
Yeah,
so
no, that's a different can of
we're
worms.
not going to change.
Yeah. That's a whole nother situation. That to me is just, it's simple as day. It's like people just don't want to go back on the thing that they place their bets on.
Yeah.
That's different.
What do you make of that? This is a left turn in the conversation, but not that I'd want to spend the rest of our time talking about the COVID era.
Yeah.
What do you think if you had to fast forward 50 years and now you've got grandkids that are going to learn about what happened in 2020 to 2022?
Yeah.
What is the story that history is going to tell of that era, if you had to guess?
That's a tough one because I think what we're basing it off of is what we grew up and experienced from a what happened 50 years ago standpoint.
Yeah.
So when we were in school, we read books that were the curriculum, and this is the agreed upon history of something. I don't know if that's possible anymore. I don't know if there will ever be a time where we'll have agreed upon book history that everyone learns, especially talking about COVID. Every single person that was on whatever side of the COVID, million arguments about that thing 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, they're still in on that. And everyone who's on the other side is still in on that, and probably more militant on each side about that thing. So if we've got this divide down the middle, and every 4 years it swings one way or the other of who's in charge of writing the history books, how the hell are you going to agree on what happened there?
We might disagree on this.
Okay.
I'll be interested to see if we do, because I think that we know people for whom that would not be true, where they had a certain, I know several people
that moved after
yes,
getting more information.
That had a certain definition of what was going on. They thought about the world a certain way, presented with enough evidence over the course of 2 or 3 years. Something
tipped it.
Something happened where they realized, oh, wait a minute, what I thought about that thing definitely isn't true. And now there's this retrospective that has to happen of like, what else did I think was true that wasn't?
I agree with you on that. I know that that's happened and is happening and continues to happen. But I also think that there are plenty of people that double down.
No question.
That aren't moving.
I think as a percentage, if I had to guess, I would say that as a percentage, there are more people in the willing to change their mind if presented with better evidence category than are so pot committed on their way of thinking that they're going to ride or die with that way of thinking.
I'm not sure.
What I think is more likely the case is that you have a whole generation of people raised in the internet world that know that whatever you put out there as your thought of the moment now lives in permanent marker, and you're never going to be able to take it back. And our culture has become so unwilling to give grace as a default mode that people are just scared to death to say, oh, I screwed that up.
Sure. But to your point, though, how does that make it into a book?
What do you mean?
What becomes the definitive history of what this was?
Truth has to be able to prevail at some point. And there has to be such thing as objective truth. You will have a percentage of people that you can present them with factual, this is what happened, and you were just wrong about it. And they will stay pot committed forever because their ego's tied into it.
Sure.
That exists.
Sure.
But objective truth is objective truth, whether you like it or not.
I just don't know if we live in that era anymore.
Why?
I don't know if objective truth is possible anymore at scale.
Literally, or just because people are people?
Well, there is such thing as objective truth.
Okay, good. We're on the same ground there. Then.
Something happened or it didn't.
Right.
I just don't know how this current state of things pans out to where objective truth becomes agreed upon. That's what's fucked up right now, is people have a difficult time disseminating information because of, the way things are right now with media and social media and how much stuff's being thrown at them. And one article will treat you this way and another article treats you this way. And both of those things are kind of true. And you're always kind of looking at, all right, I need another data source. I think people are worn out. And so because of that, attention spans are shorter than they've ever been. People are reading headlines only, finding the headline that makes sense to them because of the algorithms that are just in their bubble. They choose to hear the one that makes the most sense to them, and then that's it. And unfortunately, I don't think we have enough of an infrastructure in place to solve for that right now. And that's what so you've heard people say, like, we're in the post-truth era. Like, that's what that means, is like truth kind of doesn't exist anymore. There's no agreed upon objective truth on certain things. Every headline, every news source, every article has, this is what happened, and a counterpoint of like, they're full of shit.
So I think we can agree that that's not ideal.
It's not ideal. And that's my point is like, our version of this when we were kids was, this is the history.
Yeah.
Who the fuck's going to write it?
Right.
Who's going to agree to it?
So if that's not ideal, and we can agree that that's not ideal, as a marketer, how would you steer a culture? How would you market to a generation of young people in a way that gets them out of those echo chambers, or at least gives them enough pause to say, maybe I'm wrong about this thing?
That's a good question.
Go back to the Marlboro example, because
Sure.
you've told me before this, like the job that was done in marketing cigarettes and then sort of counter marketing cigarettes, where now, before
It's
it
the
was
best campaign of all time.
Let's talk about that a little bit.
Okay, so everything I said about cigarettes and how cool it was, right? They didn't say it out loud, but everybody knew it, right? Like, get that good looking dude holding a cigarette. That's going to sell more cigarettes, right? When I was growing up, I'm 41. So when I was growing up, 80s, 90s, cool people smoked. And it was because it looked cool. And so when you got to the high school age, or, even junior high, really, if you were the kid who smoked at that age, you were telling everybody around you, I don't conform. Because at that point, we know that this is bad for you. We're all unspoken on this level that like, it looks really cool. I'm willing to look cool regardless of those health effects. I want to look cool so badly that I'm willing to die.
That's really what it is.
Of course.
Yeah.
And then also there's another layer to that, which is like, I'm willing to die. It's not today. I'm not lighting this and going to drop dead. I'm willing to die young. I'm willing to cut a few years off my life for this.
A really painful death too, by the way.
Could be.
Yeah.
So that was cool. Like, undeniably, my entire, age from, I would say from age like, 13 to where I kind of like understood this stuff till like early 20s. So probably like 2001, 2002, something like that. It was prevalent. Like, nobody looked at the smoker and went like, what a loser, what an idiot. The most like nerdy bookworm people would say like, oh, smoking's bad for you. What are you doing? Like, but like, you're a fucking nerd. Get away from it.
Right.
That changed.
Yeah.
That actually changed to where when you see somebody smoking a cigarette today, you feel bad for them and you feel gross, and you look at them and think that person sucks. Man, what's going on with that person? How could they light up? Look how dumb they look. Look how stupid that thing looks in your hand. That's insane. That's the most successful marketing of all time.
What changed?
I think a non-stop assault on intelligence of what that means if you're a smoker. So it starts with health. It starts with like, look at this. Look how dumb this is. Look how bad this is. Look at whatever. But that's not enough. I think in the same ways that like, hey, let's redo on it. You've got the playbook. Like, good luck with that. Like, so many things you can't control. So I think you have this constant 20, 30 year marketing of like, this will kill you. This is the worst thing in the world, blah, blah, blah. Millions of dollars spent on that. Also removing all of those opportunities, like I said, with the advertising and all this stuff. So now it's like, you're a pariah, to some degree if you're smoking, but they're still like, yeah, but it's cool. Then this crazy thing happens in culture, which I don't think anybody saw coming, which is all of a sudden it's cool to be healthy. Like that's what really, really changed. So, and you can see it today with kids more than ever. So because of the, maybe silver lining of social media, everyone wants to be an influencer. Everyone wants to be on camera. Everyone wants to, hawk whatever product. Like, that's the most sought after profession, if you're talking to kids today, what do you want to do when you grow up? Influencer. I want to be famous, whatever. They understand how detrimental alcohol, smoking, all these bad things make you look. They can see the future. They can see their parents, their grandparents, all of these other people. They can see in media what a 45-year-old used to look like and what they look like today. And they have this touchstone, which is really, it's still selfishly driven, as we all are. Like they want to look good. They want to look good today. They want to look good tomorrow. Exercise went from like kind of a fringe thing to like, why aren't you at the gym? Like this is now, you have to go to the gym every day. This is a thing. So all these things like work together, like a cultural shift towards health and fitness. Did you ever, when you were a kid, did you ever think about organic food? Did you ever think about where your burger came from or whatever? Or it was just like McDonald's is the cheapest, fastest thing? Like all these things shifted to where the worst. So if the best thing you could do is take care of yourself, go to the gym, eat organic food, the worst version of that is smoking.
Right.
So all of those things line up. And now when you see somebody smoke, it's weird. It's gross.
So then apply that to what's happening now broadly in culture. The inability to say objectively, this is bad for you.
Yeah.
By any measure. Okay, it's cool, but at the expense of your future health and longevity and all those things. Is there a marketing campaign to be done on our culture now to say, know how to identify truth when you see it? Know how to overcome your own preconceived ideas or decisions that you've made, or be able to question even the things that you think are objective truth. Be open enough to maybe changing your mind. How would you go about building that campaign, the sort of there is no truth?
So I think it's to keep with the cigarette analogy. Let's say the 20s, the 30s, the 40s, the 50s, everyone's smoking and ruining their lives, but nobody knows it. And then all of a sudden the 60s, you start to learn that this might be bad for you. By the time you get into the 80s, it's like, really bad. So I think we're in the 1920s or 1930s with social media in that regard, and media in general, and information in general, and the internet as a weapon or a tool, and how to disseminate what's real, what's fake, and what's smart and what's dumb, and all of that stuff. And so I think like the 1920s through 1960s in this analogy is not the 2010s through the 2080s. It's the 2020s through the 2030s, because everything's so accelerated. But we're learning in real time how detrimental some of this stuff is, right? Like you'll hear these studies about teen suicide and depression and all these things, and then they're tying it back to social media use and being bullied and the pressures of social media. So like we're seeing the gum disease, we're seeing emphysema, we're seeing all of these things, and we're starting to correlate them together in real time. And so I think what's going to happen is we don't have that thing to look for in the future at this moment for what this long-term effect is. Once we start getting emphysema, that generation is going to start seeing this thing sort of naturally as like, oh yeah, that's bad. Right. We can hope to put together these campaigns, these studies or whatever, and start to tell people that smoking's bad for you. But it's going to take some years before people start to really see, and jumping back and forth between the analogies, but like before they really start to see, maybe I shouldn't drink if I want to be on camera. In the same way of like, maybe I need to spend a little more time in the real world and away from social media. Maybe I need to understand how the algorithms work to affect my consciousness, and who's benefiting from that, and why they're benefiting from that, and why I might be seeing something in a certain way, knowing where the paper trail goes.
Right.
Until people understand this, we're fucked. And I have these conversations all the time because I'm so deep into marketing and social media or whatever. All this stuff's a given. So when I say to someone, no, the reason that you're seeing that is because X, Y, and Z, and here's how they make money. So a lot of times they go like, oh,
Hadn't thought about it before.
I didn't know that's how they make money. And it's like, oh shit, we got a problem.
Right.
Because this is like, I'm so cynical to all this stuff. Everything I see, whether it's a political speech or an ad or, a PR article, like I know how this sausage is made.
Uh-huh.
So none of this stuff like affects me on the level of like, I need to go march on Washington. Like I know where all this leads back. Somebody's getting rich, but not a lot of people understand that.
So I'm Donald Trump and you've got to talk to me about, you like that for a pivot. If I'm Donald Trump and I'm looking for how to create the anti-smoking campaign for the new generation who is just as addicted to their phones as people were in the 20s to cigarettes.
Yeah.
How do you think about it? What's the solution to that? Who are you marketing to?
Okay, well, first of all, are you being literal Donald Trump or are you being like metaphorical leader of the country?
No, I'm Donald Trump.
Okay, so you're fucked because Donald Trump knows this and he's doing it.
Because he's leveraged it.
He knows how to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Everything he says, everything he does is because he intimately understands how this stuff works.
Mm.
He knows how to say a thing that's going to fire up a base in a certain way. He understands the power of marketing, whether it's social, speech, business deals, the way he dresses, all of it.
Yeah.
He understands what he's doing. So he's not interested in solving this.
Let's pretend he is.
That's what I was saying.
He's interested in solving this.
So we have a theoretical leader of the country who wants to solve this problem.
Well, this is subjective. Right?
Yeah.
We have to be able to identify what objective truth is.
Okay, so are you trying to get me to create what I think a marketing campaign should be for this?
Yes. I'm Donald Trump, and I've walked into restaurants for the last 10 years and recognized there's families all over this restaurant who every member of the family that's sitting at that table is on their own device, totally ignoring each other. And that's probably not ideal for the future.
Yeah.
So I want to create, as part of my legacy, I want to be the president that turns the ship there, at least enough that in the future, it's looked at as the anti-smoking campaign.
Sure.
What do you do?
It's pretty simple in what you can even hope to do, but for it to actually work, it has to appeal at the selfish level. What I said about the health and fitness thing. So when I was in grade school, Reagan era, there was the President's National Physical Fitness Competition Initiative. And I think it was Nancy Reagan that did that. Or maybe H.W. Bush. One of the two. Maybe he carried it on. Anyway, point being, all of a sudden, we would have this period in class where it was like, okay, now we're going to see how many push-ups you can do and how many sit-ups you can do and how many pull-ups you can do. And if you get to this level, you get this patch, And when that started, nobody in class was like, oh, now I get it. I have to be healthy. It's like, it starts with like these little kind of initiatives. If the culture had not swung towards health and fitness, that thing never takes off.
Right.
Right. So all of those cultural things have to line up. You can do your best to put those programs in place. And we're going to say there's a national education program about how to disseminate bad information, how to understand the ill effects of social media, isolation of being on your device all day. We can put all those programs in place and it'll convert a handful of people, right? But to really make a change, the culture has to go there.
Right.
They have to be motivated by a selfish reason to where that information now resonates.
Is it even possible, or should the governmental infrastructure even be a part of that solution?
Yeah, why not? Couldn't hurt. If you're going to pretend that government's supposed to be about helping its people, might as well.
Is the work that the government does to create that shift more important than the culture, or as important as the culture adopting it?
Important in making it work?
Let me recast that.
Yeah.
I would say, the government would take the credit for that shift having happened in the first place.
Oh yeah, they'll take credit for whatever, but the dog won't hunt if everyone's not there.
Right.
It's all marketing, dude. If I invent a new product and that product is a brand new category, No one's ever heard of this thing before. It's a coffee that makes you run 10 times faster, jump 10 times higher, and be more likable. Okay. That's an easy thing to sell. All of those things I want, right? If this thing is a coffee that doesn't have caffeine, but it makes you play badminton better, nobody's out there looking for that thing.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Right.
So like, I need those incentives to line up for that product to make sense, for it to even have a chance, right? Now, let's say my badminton uncaffeinated coffee, which is essentially just shitty tasting water, has no effect. I don't play badminton. If I'm the best marketer in the world and I create this campaign, this ad, this really clever thing that's like, oh, I gotta try that. I can convince you to buy it one time. You're never coming back.
Right.
You know what I mean?
If it sucks.
Yeah. Well, because there's no benefit there. There's no personal, like, selfish thing that's going to pay off to go, I need to get that again. I don't play badminton and I do need more energy. You tricked me into buying this thing with clever marketing. I'm not coming back because there's no like personal, selfish thing that was, that resonated with me as a result of your product.
There's no actual resulting positive impact that the product had on you, therefore you won't buy it again.
Right. So if I'm addicted to my phone, to bring this full circle, if I'm addicted to my phone and I love sitting there with my family, staring at my phone while he's staring at his phone and she is too, whatever, and you keep telling me that this is unhealthy, but I really enjoy this, like, I'm not listening. It's not going to work. Right? If I feel that this is unhealthy, if I start to see my relationship slipping, if I start to see my kid going down this path, now all of a sudden that information actually makes sense to me. Now I'll start to like work on it. So to the original question, could the government, is this a good thing? Like, absolutely. Like, let's pitch good information. Let's pitch good campaigns that are for the benefit of everybody to be healthier and happier and whatever. But until this actually resonates with somebody and says, oh yeah, I need to stop this.
Yeah.
It's all for naught.
Because it feels good in the moment, and most people are looking for feel good in the moment. So there's not a reckoning that has to happen there.
Of course. Yeah. We got to start seeing people die of emphysema.
Yeah.
You know, and see where this goes in the long term before it really resonates with everyone.
Boy, a campaign would certainly include going to Disney, because it's incredible how many people, when you go into to the Beauty and the Beast castle in Disney, are sitting there on their phone, flipping through their phone, not paying attention to their family or the fact that they're sitting in Magic Kingdom, you know, doing the thing that they're looking at pictures of.
Which is twice as ironic at Disney, because they spend so much time on attention to detail when you're standing in that line, to where you have things to look at and appreciate and understand how talented everyone is that made this thing.
Yeah. Yeah. That's exactly right.
So where's that lead?
Yeah. Who knows?
Yeah. Well, look at architecture from 100 years ago versus today. It goes from like, let's pay attention to making this look amazing, to let's make a box. They need a box with a door, windows, maybe.
Right.
You know, what color? Beige, cheapest one.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So everyone's looking at their phone anyway. Why do we need to spend an extra hour on the shape of this stone facade?
Yeah. Well, if there was going to be a successful marketing campaign along those lines to get people to wake up from it, it would certainly require people with your particular skill set.
Cynicism.
That's your skill set. You're a world-class cynic.
Yep.
No, it would certainly take people with your skill set who would have a willingness to even take that kind of a project on, because where you stand at this moment in time, I would be overwhelmed by the task to begin with. Like, I'm the kind of person that when I go into a restaurant now, because I've seen it, I can't unsee it. I go in and I'm just even subconsciously taking an inventory of, look how many freaking people in this restaurant are on their phone. It's unbelievable. I wouldn't even get started.
Yeah.
So
you think like that. I think like that to a certain degree. I know it's bad in the same way that smoking's bad, but I'm still going to smoke here and there. The kids don't know that yet. Like, you have to physically take that phone away from my son and say, we are done.
Yeah.
Because to them, they don't know this is bad. To them, they don't fully understand.
Or you have to build a marketing campaign that gets it into their head in a way that the family sitting around a table, all sitting there obesely looking at their phone the whole time is
Obesely.
really uncool.
Yes. But again, to my point, until that resonates with that kid, you're just saying, don't smoke. And then you're going to go, parents don't know shit.
Right.
I'm going to go smoke.
Yeah, but I like this phone.
Yeah. I like smoking.
Yeah.
I look so cool when I smoke. You know, like, it has to resonate.
Ultimately, it's a tool, and any tool can be misused.
For sure.
But marketing it in such a way that you understand what misuse looks like,
Mhm.
so that when you see it in yourself, you go, oh shit, I got sloppy drunk the last 5 days in a row. Maybe I have a problem with this substance.
Mm-hmm.
Until that happens, it's just a feel-good thing that you have to have in your life because you got to have a smartphone.
That's right.
Yeah. Mike, I appreciate you, man. This
Are we done?
The hours go by quick. That was over an hour.
Oh,
So
man. I
we're
wanted
kind
to
of
get into some other stuff.
past our time here.
We don't have any more time.
Come back sooner.
Damn it.
I think we're 6 months, 5 months from when we did it last. So let's just do it again sooner.
I'll do it next week. I have an idea that I want to do with you.
Cool. Well, let's talk about it.
Cool.
I appreciate the time, man. Really do.
Thanks for having me, buddy.